as you start to look through the camera more, you start to not look at the world the way that you do if you're just, moving through the supermarket. You start to see it in terms of frames. And what you're going to find is there are a lot of rules of composition, and they're very easy to find. If you open up any book about video production, there'll be a chapter about rules, and you'll see the rule of thirds and something about headroom and something about the 180-degree rule. And all of these rules are really great, except that they're not really rules at all. They're very much just guidelines. These rules often are not only broken, but they completely disappear over time. There was a time when I first started where you didn't want to move the camera. You very clearly wanted the camera on a tripod. That is gone. People are wandering around with shaky cams all the time, and these programs even have, editing programs even have like a shaky cam filter you can put on, so you can add shake to your camera. And you often didn't want lens flare, where you're pointing a camera into a light and you get artifacts from the light coming in and it kind of washes it out. Now it's super cool. You can also buy filters now to add lens flare in case you want to add it now. That was something you used to work really hard to add matte boxes and flag off lights. You didn't want it. Now you can add it on if you pay money. So the rules are all just guidelines to be used to help you out. So what you're going to find is that I'm going to talk a lot about the principles behind the rules and a lot about philosophy, my own personal philosophy, which I happen to find interesting. Like, I'm the person who, when I was a kid, I'd sit at Denny's for hours drinking coffee and just talking about like what makes one piece of music better than another or something like that. And I haven't changed. Yeah, and I haven't changed a bit. So I will still talk about this stuff all day long. So where am I going with this? Yeah, so you've got these rules that are just kind of vague guidelines, and then you've got some of your own philosophy and some principles that'll develop, but none of those things will ever actually, make you a good, camera person. You'll never become really good at making pretty pictures if you're just following the rules and sort of fumbling through some guidelines that I tell you. So, but there is one way to become a really good camera person. And those of you who've been around me for a while probably know what that is. Does anyone have a guess what I'm going to say?
Deodorant?
You're close. That'll make you a tolerable camera person. Now, how will you get good at making pictures?
Doing it.
Doing it. Yeah. You gotta do it. You gotta press record on your camera. You gotta press record on your camera, and then you have to take the next step, which is you have to go watch whatever it is you shot, and you really have to look at it. Now, if you kind of have these vague rules and you don't really have your philosophy in place, how do you know what to look for? And this is going to be my favorite part of the presentation because I made up a word. So how do you know what to look for when you're reviewing your footage, if you're just getting started, or even if you've been doing it for a long time? And the word I wrote right up there, and it's MUI. You're looking for MUI, and that is an acronym, and it stands for makes you want to watch it. And that is it. So all of your rules can be, you can throw away the rules. There's people who've made great images and they have no idea about the rules. You're really, all of that stuff is just talk. The important thing is if you have an image that makes you want to watch it, that draws you in, that sucks the viewer in, that makes you ask questions, that makes you want to see more, that gets some sort of emotional response, that progresses the story forward, then you've made a really great image. The thing is that will change over time. As you grow, whatever you shoot today, 5 years later, you'll be looking back at your old stuff and you're like, that has no MUI. I don't want to watch that anymore. I want to watch this new thing. That'll change over time as you grow. What you think is a good picture will change. But it's really a great place to start, is not to get bent out of shape about the rules or all of this other stuff. Just look at that picture and say, yeah, critically look at it and say, yeah, that is drawing me in. That says what I wanted to say. I learn a lot from discussions, and that's why we're all here instead of me yapping at you about a PowerPoint presentation. I thought, there's one way I could do this, which is just tell you a bunch of rules. The other way is we could have a discussion, we could bring out a camera, and we can actually look through the lens and see what we're looking at and see what kind of choices we make. So please ask questions and interrupt, and we'll make this a discussion. Well, how does that make you feel knowing that there's not really there's not really rules or principles or anything that are set in stone? Is that freeing or is that terrifying?
I'm fine with that as long as I agree that it's what you want to watch. So sometimes something that looks good in one film may not look good in another, and it's like, oh, that was not worth it.
Right.
Yeah. And just watching and editing and watching what I have to edit a lot of times, it's interesting to see what works and what doesn't work too. Yeah,
I think you're doing a lot of editing right now, and I think that's the best way to start dialing it in. I'm sure you've learned a lot just by watching what's been shot.
I've learned a lot too from directing and not knowing. In directing, and setting up shots.
Yeah.
But sometimes they just don't work. What you think might work, or they set up for a panel the same way, and it's.
I feel like I would say that there are rules, and rules are meant to be broken. And you have the rule of thirds. Put someone's eye line here because that looks good 11 times out of 10. It works. You can stick with that rule, and you can have beautiful shots. But what will make your shots really tell your story is if you say, "Here's a rule. What does it mean?" And then break that rule. I think Mr. Robot was a great example of that. It was a show where they had a lot of weird composition and a lot of framing that didn't make sense. It didn't follow the rule of thirds, but that helped further the story. Mm-hmm. So there are rules, and they're meant to be broken.
That's the conclusion of art.
Right.
So it's there. What's an eyeliner? Eyeline?
Where the person who you're filming is looking at.
Right. I think it makes your viewer think outside the box when you change things up a little bit. They're expecting things to be a certain way, and if you do things a little bit differently, it makes them think along with you a little bit more.
Yeah. We've just seen the same shot thousands and thousands and thousands of times, and to see someone do something completely different is so refreshing. Having someone break the rules is so refreshing. Anyway.
It was interesting to watch the old movie, the Alfred Hitchcock one that Pickford had recently.
Mm-hmm.
It was I want to say North by Northwest. Is that the one? Anyway, they did a complete overhead shot in a room, and it was so strange to see that. And it was like, why would they have done that? It didn't kind of make sense, other than somebody was trying for an interesting shot. But
which sometimes is
You didn't see the judgment of that? This overlord shot, proposes that they were facing some moral dilemma inside the shot itself.
I thought it was distracting.
It was Hitchcock, so he didn't do it just for fun.
I'm just saying, I found it distracting.
No,
and that's great. That's such an important.
That's where you come to art.
I would say absolutely, there's totally a meaning there, especially with Hitchcock. There's always a meaning there. Yeah. But at the same time, looking at cinematography that you see from the 50s, now from the lens of today, it can be distracting. Because the rules, so to speak, were different. The cinematic conventions, people were doing different things back then. And so now you look at it, 50
totally
plus
different
years later.
presentation.
Exactly.
I have something to say about that, about Hitchcock specifically. Something I discovered only recently reading about him is that where he talks about he started out in silent film. When he really started out, and he developed this idea of telling a story visually. And so that even later, when he made his thrillers, and he would get good script writers, and they would work on the script, and they would have some really good lines and some interesting dialogue. But he said, structurally, first though, he would script and storyboard with his team the entire movie so that it could be told visually, so that even if you didn't hear key pieces of dialogue, it wouldn't. The plot would be clear to you, even if you didn't have to stop and have it explained to you verbally.
I wanted this to become a discussion,
But it's
but I also have an agenda.
yeah.
So keep this discussion rhythm going, but I'm gonna cut us off and move us ahead, because I do have a couple of other, many other things I want to get to, but a couple of things I want to say by way of introduction, and I don't want them to get lost. The first one is that I think it's also important, as well as looking at your own, footage and looking for your own MUI. For those of you who missed it, MUI is a word I made up. I'm going to say that over and over because I'm so proud of this word I made up. As you come in late, MUI, it makes you want to watch it. And if your image makes you want to watch it, you're on track. But there's another part. I think it's really also important to bring your work in here, ask for feedback from people around you. Be thick-skinned because you're going to get criticism. If you talk to me, you'll definitely get criticism. I criticize my own work constantly, and so I'm certainly willing to criticize yours. But I think you need to, you just need to take that criticism and just keep learning and growing. That's just the best way to learn.
Could we do that sometime?
Absolutely.
Like, just have a night where we bring in all our stuff and somebody, where we just have a critique class, where we just sit there and critique everybody.
This is your spot.
Only submit like 10 minutes, and then we talk about it.
This is your space. We can do whatever you want. Just let me know when and
Well,
where.
it's not my
I'll
space.
Be here.
I'd have
It's
a
our
problem
space. It's our space. Is that is a word I use a lot, which is intention. I think it's really, really important to shoot with intention. It's really easy to just put the camera right here, because this is where we stand, and you put the lens sort of like in the middle of the long, wide area, and you just sort of randomly point it at whatever you're filming. But the other way is to really have a clear goal and a clear intention, and really look in that frame and know what you want in that frame, what you want to leave out of that frame, the height of the camera you want, what lens you want to use, what part of the lens you want to use, to really be very intentional. And that's true with, everything you're doing when you're editing, when you're directing, when you're, conducting an interview. Be very intentional about where you're going with your story. Are there any questions?
I gotta add something to that.
Yeah, please.
As far as photography,
Yeah.
when I'm going to shoot something, I'll walk around the scene to see how I want to frame it, what I want to look at, what I want to include, what I want to delete, what angles I can see it from, if I'm looking at it from different angles, what I can include, what I don't want to see in there, and just looking at it from going around it, what might make it more of an interesting frame or an interesting picture.
And how many shots, I know there's not an exact answer, but how many times do you press that shutter button before you have the shot you want?
Right.
That's a question. How
Oh
many
yeah,
times?
it can be infinite.
Yeah, a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's, for
It
me,
depends
when
on what I'm shooting too.
It depends. Sometimes things happen and you have to be there in the moment.
Right.
But if you're shooting a piece of architecture or something, at least for myself, the same. I'll take a shot and I'll look at it and I'll be like, it's not quite where, I think if I stepped in, came a little lower, I may get closer to what I want. Or the light isn't quite right as it's reflecting on me. Just like an inch can make a big difference.
I think if you do that a lot, you start to see it in your head before you start to see it in the camera.
Yeah. We're talking about composition, and when I was thinking about this meeting, I decided to look up composition, and what I found was how objects are arranged in the frame, which I found just perfect, that's it, but it didn't really, that definition didn't say much about what I want to do with my composition, so I made up I not only make up words, I make up definitions apparently. So I made up a new definition of composition, which is to create the picture that fully expresses the idea of the story at that moment. For me, my goal is to create a picture that fully expresses the idea of the story at that moment. And obviously, no idea I'm going to tell you today is mine. They're just things I've riffed off of And there's a quote by Alfred Hitchcock that says something very similar, which is that the size of the object in the frame should be equal to its importance of the story at that moment. So,
Wow, that's,
yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's simple.
Yeah.
The size of the object in the frame should be equal to its importance of the story. So if...
even in writing, it's the same thing. If you don't mention something that has nothing to do with the story.
You're really editing out all the stuff that doesn't, move the story forward.
One of the things I've been noticing in movies is if someone's having a conversation and all of a sudden the frame is just their two faces and there's basically nothing else in there, it really kind of puts you in their discussion.
Right.
So it's real close.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing when that shot opens when they're in the restaurant and you're seeing it from behind the,
Yeah.
you're seeing it from behind the bar and the ketchup bottles and everything, and they're far away. And then you cut into the
You're right there.
right there where they're talking. It's a completely different feel. Frame is what you have to tell your visual story with. And I think it is really easy for us to... It's such a strange thing. If you've ever taken a photograph of something like the Grand Canyon, you can be standing there and you've got all the noise, you've got this 360-degree view, and you've got this beautiful vista, and you take a photo of it, and the photo just doesn't do it any justice at all. You've got this little two-dimensional image that has no sound or no feeling or nothing about your hike or how you feel right now. It's just, all you have is this frame to work with. So you have to be very, very intentional about what you put in that frame. Because if it's not in there, you'll never see it. If it's not in there, it's not, the person who views it who's not you is not going to, they're not going to have any of those, those feelings of who you were with or what the sounds were like or anything. They just have what's in that frame. So as you're taking pictures, again, you've just got that frame. I can get, like I said maybe earlier, I can get really academic about this stuff because I enjoy it. I enjoy thinking about it, I enjoy talking about it, I enjoy reading how other cinematographers do their work. But at the end of the day, none of that stuff matters. At the end of the day, you just need to grab your camera, have fun, take some pictures, look at them, and you're just going to continue to grow and grow as you do all of those things. What you're taking is not reality. There are some situations where you're getting closer and closer to reality, but even like in a documentary. If you were making a documentary about a baseball player, chances are you would want to do an interview with that baseball player somewhere on the ball field. It might look really great to have them somewhere in between the pitcher's mound and third base, and you'd put them there, and they'd have the scoreboard in the back kind of blown out, and you'd get this really nice shot. But the reality is that player may never stand in that spot. They might run back and forth to it, but they may be playing, they're playing first base. They may never be in that spot. They'd spend a lot more time in their kitchen doing dishes. But you're not going to do the interview with them in the kitchen doing dishes. So you're always, even in your most realistic situation, you're always manipulating reality. And you're manipulating time. Because you're going to condense this whole thing into, whatever length it is, from 5 minutes to 2 hours or whatever. So because you can do that, even if it's a documentary and you're trying to be realistic, find that you're trying to be realistic, but you're not trying to be realistic in terms of life. And I'm going to try to say this. You're not trying to capture, what am I trying to say? Someone help me out. You're not trying to capture the real moment. You're trying to capture an interpretation of that real experience. So even if you're doing a documentary, doing a lot of the stuff we do here, don't be afraid to move the camera and leave something out or get right in there and really capture that moment. Your artistic interpretation of that moment. Yeah? Who has any thoughts on all of that?
My thought would be that in reality, the most important part is the story itself, whatever that is, and then just trying to decorate that story with whoever you use as actors or costumes or props or lighting or all that stuff is just like coming together to make that the way you want that story to be interpreted.
That's perfect. That's exactly it. Yeah, you're just continually, yeah, I couldn't say it better. You're continually falling back on that story and asking, what is the story I want to tell? And, how can I, where do I put the camera to tell that story?
And the thing I've noticed is you gotta do a lot of improv while you're doing that.
Yeah.
You just keep on going with the flow and hope you can gather it the way you want it to be.
For sure. Absolutely. And the nice thing is, like you said, if you know your story, the only way you can go with the flow and do a lot of improv is if you have that story as your compass to point you in the right direction. So because you're right, when you're out there, it is so easy to like head to the left or head down this road, or someone says we should go film this, and you've really got to have that really strong compass to say, I'm going to do this instead. Or but you gotta stick.
Live by it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm not even sure. Well, that goes down another thing. But yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of room to improv on your storyboard. But it's so nice to have that storyboard to be like that. To me,
You get
making
that
some
shot.
sketches.
Make sure you get that
well,
shot
making
or
some
something.
sketches helps me know exactly what are my goals here. Sometimes, man, you get to set and it's just different, and you just have to.
It's like, I remember when I used to go to these landscaping classes, I'm not particularly a big landscape painter or anything like that. But we'd go out, and people would come back and show what they did. And if you were like at a farm, let's say, it's basically you have to have one thing that's dominant and then the other things are subordinate. Because otherwise, you'll notice some people paint something and everything's equally important. So you've got the house and you've got the chickens and you have the cow and you have the dog and you have the fence. And everything is just like describing everything that's there but doesn't say anything. So you have to pick something that's going to be dominant, and then the other things are just stuff that's around it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're not saying anything.
Yeah, you really do. Exactly that. That's one of those rules of composition is you want to make sure your image has a focus, that your eye isn't being distracted all over the place by other things. Again, all these rules are meant to be broken. There's several times that you do want, in a chaotic scene, you might want your eye distracted all over
Yeah,
the place.
especially if you have the
But like a
knife on
nice
the table,
pastoral.
and at the end they're going to kill somebody with it. You want to be sure it's there.
Yeah, but like you,
For sure.
but like you said, a nice pastoral landscape. You've got a farm, and the sun is setting behind it. You want to make sure that image has a nice, clear focus that draws your eye in, and then you can start moving around it from there, rather than things all over the place.
I want to go back to what Ellen was saying about intention and about how everything's the story is paramount and everything's serving the story. Like intention is such a huge thing. If you're doing anything, or if anything, even subconsciously, is in your image, why? Why are you doing that? If I'm setting up a shot, my character is on the right side of the frame. Well, why? Why am I putting them there? I'm shooting them on a 35mm lens. Why? Why is that focal length right for this shot? Close up, medium, whatever, any composition or lighting choice, or even going into sound and production design and every aspect of filmmaking. Why are you doing this, and how is that telling the story? How is that furthering the plot?
For sure. Which brings us to an exercise I want to do.
Yeah.
So is anyone? I need someone to go sit on that couch. Yes.
Yay.
Again, this is,
Couch sitter.
no, one thing you need to know about this is we're talking about the principles of composition. We have maybe the ugliest couch I've ever seen from the 80s that's been thrashed against a cream-colored wall.
Okay.
The chance of us actually creating a beautiful picture here are like zero. But we will use this just to sort of discuss possibilities. And the idea is hopefully it'll open up our minds to some of the questions you might ask. So I thought I'd come up with sit right there. That's great.
Okay.
So how do we want to compose this shot?
Do you want to create a story of them?
Well, what's the emotion?
Yeah, do you want to create a story?
Look at that. Everyone's got the right answer. That easy. We don't have any idea. That was a trick question. Actually, it wasn't a trick question at all. It's the question you will you ask yourself every time. There's no trick to it. Yeah, what are we trying to do with this? So, just for the fun
Can
of
we
it,
come up with a theme?
I'm gonna give us a couple of scenarios.
Yay.
So here's this moment in this particular film. We only have one shot to get this. We can't. As most of you know, what I usually recommend is wide, medium, close, close, close. If you don't know what you're gonna do, grab a wide shot, grab a medium shot, grab 3 close-ups. You're gonna be fine. But that is a fallback. That is not a.
That's another guideline.
It's beginner lessons.
It's a beginner lesson. It's
Yeah.
like if you don't have any idea what to do, just do that. But
I
as you
even
go,
wrote that down. So.
yeah, wide, medium, close, close, close. It just works. However, and then you can fix it. You can figure it out in editing, and chances are you're going to be able to put together a story if you have that. However, the definition I gave to create the picture that fully expresses the idea of the story at that moment, that suggests that there is a different way to do it than wide, medium, close, close, close. It suggests that there is one angle or one composition that's really going to tell the story you want to tell. So in this scenario, let's say Gina has, she's always been a reader her whole life. And she's just separated from her partner of many, many years.
Congratulations.
I'm kind of making this up as I
No
go. I
acting
hope we're all
going
right
on
with
here,
this.
none whatsoever.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Just go for it. It's okay.
So it's so she's lonely. She's always turned to books, and she's going to sit there and sink in to read. She's just gonna sit and read this book. Where might we put the camera for that shot?
Back
What
there.
do you think? Back there?
Back
Why?
there. Because I want to shoot it with a long lens.
Okay.
And I agree with
Actually, I'm going to
Why?
actually change my question a little bit because we're going into lens choice. I want to say let's do it this way. What are we going to include in the frame? That's a much better question. What do you want to include in the frame here?
I think my face, my emotion.
I feel like I want to have a lot of
Wait,
thought.
first we gotta get a full
No,
scene, and maybe include
Okay.
the book.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
maybe in this case, if we wanted to indicate that there was that there was a partnership and one person is gone, we might want to show more of that couch and have
Oh. The
our
emptiness.
principal, as she is now, in fact, occupying one section of the couch, and there's a distinct possibility that another person could be sitting quite comfortably on that other part of the couch,
What if you just?
but there's nobody there.
I really like that. I was thinking. I mean, the word that stood out to me from what Arrow said was lonely, and so I was thinking, and have this be a wide shot, have it have a lot of empty space.
Empty space, yeah.
And I was imagining her center framed. But if you put her on one side and you sort of have that imbalance, I really like that idea.
Yeah, and this is the other scenario where we frequently, if
There's
we saw
also,
this.
This is great. By
There's
the way.
also,
This is exactly what I was hoping would
coming up
happen
from
now.
behind. Because I was thinking about
Yeah.
approaching it from behind because of
over her
the
shoulder,
pass.
zoom in
Yeah.
on the book,
You know,
and then
or is it
zoom out the empty space on the couch.
Normally, because if I didn't have a story that
We
entered,
would use all these probably.
the other thing that this shot would indicate is that someone is going to enter the frame and sit on that part of the couch.
Can you see that
Yeah, but we
frame?
didn't.
So are you imagining something like
We
that?
made more action.
Maybe
He's got more
not.
action going on. Now we want somebody to come in.
Well, yeah. If you see a shot like this, not normally, but a lot of times we think that
I would've shot
we
the book.
feel that
Do the book and then pull back.
we feel that there's something missing here, and so I think since we've seen so many stories told visually, we would expect that in this scene, another character is going to enter and sit, or another
What do you guys
character is
think?
going to come in here and sit. In this case, since we hold the shot and nothing happens, maybe we would feel like, damn, there's something, just without even thinking about it intellectually, or, we would kind of have the feeling that there's something empty here.
That's,
Right. And
that's excellent.
I
Yep,
like that.
yep.
To add to that, I feel like, I'm a little bit nitpicking, but it's important to do that. This is a little bit off center right here. I feel like really, if we take her out of it, if we center it, and
Okay,
then we
let's
add
give that
her
a
in
try.
there,
I think that's a really good idea.
and then she's the thing
So,
that off balances it.
Do you want, so you're thinking something
Could
closer
you read
to-
for us, please? You're not supposed to pay attention, you're supposed to be reading.
You're thinking something closer to that.
What if I
Yeah.
incorporate, let's assuming, I incorporate like acting in there, like,
Good girl.
looking in and just like, oh, and stuff like that.
We'll get there.
Okay.
And
I'd
also-
start in tight though, you
Yeah,
know?
like,
You want
because-
wider, you say?
Yeah. Really make it feel empty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like if like start from like this
It's
giant
ugly.
space and stuff.
That's ugly, that's ugly, it's ugly, it's ugly.
What
That's
is that?
Too much information
That
in it.
picture?
Yeah.
Average.
You know?
Well,
I would
well,
start,
yes,
I would
definitely.
start all the way in on her, because we're expressing a person who reads, that's going through loneliness. So how do we set up loneliness? By having just the book.
I see what you mean, and then you reveal.
And then, yeah.
A lot of
I would never
emptiness.
come back that far even, you know?
Okay.
Because look at
That's
your,
the book.
what, if we just listen to what we just heard, was Hitchcock saying the largest thing in the room should be the importance of the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, so go right in on her, you know, and then, because all this room is wasted. This is not a show about a couch, you know?
If you had something like a ring sitting on the table,
What's sitting on the
a
table?
ring.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah, we could add props.
Symbolism.
If you just
That
had a
should
ring
design.
sitting on the table, then there'd be a whole question.
What if there was
about-
just a book sitting next to her on that couch and she wasn't reading it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know,
An
just put
extra
that.
book.
Yeah.
I was gonna suggest the exact opposite. That
What's
we
that?
remove those tables, remove this table, and her sitting on that couch alone, all you have is a couch, a wall, and her, and that is an abject picture of loneliness.
Yeah,
But
I
we're
don't want to
doing
go
a
through
video,
it.
not a picture.
I don't want to go through and
Just
remove
one
the,
framing.
Yeah, I don't want to go through and remove the tables right now, but yeah, I think
Yeah, that's
you're right.
that's what I was imagining. Would
If
be
you're like-
as far as if we were to do the production design, it would just be her and the
Yeah.
couch and the wall.
Yeah.
And it would be empty. And so going back to like what Hitchcock says, the biggest thing in the frame is what's most important to the
Right.
story.
Oh, don't move that.
I mean, we have a couch that kind of blends in with the
Really is.
wall.
It's just gonna turn.
Then we can
Yeah,
imagine
that's
that the
all.
rug is
That's
a little
just-
bit brighter,
just leave it.
and then we have her, and she's contrasting with the tone of the rest of the scene. She's clearly the biggest object, even if she's small in the frame. She's the largest subject, if not literally.
But
I
whenever
really
you
think
have
we
a
should be very
person, you're always
upfront about that.
attracted to the person because you're a person.
That's great.
No,
I want to actually.
You are.
I think all that space is wasted.
I don't know that there is a right answer. I tend to. This is something very similar to what I was thinking when I first envisioned this shot, but there is no right answer. I think this is certainly one possibility.
Now, my idea
Hey,
is-
everyone! I don't want to go. Oh, get one more.
What
one more.
I would do is
Yes.
I would set the camera up here, reading, zoom in on the book,
Uh-huh.
pull out, have another camera there as she's reading, and then show the big scene.
Yeah.
And then
So you're doing two shots,
Yeah, and then
really?
a close up on her face, maybe tear on the eye, something like that. It'll
Yeah.
show emptiness.
I actually do think a really nice way to plan shots is not to give all the information right away. Sort of what you're saying is you
Right.
just sort of see. Again, it's that it makes
Because
the
that-
movie
that would
'cause
establish that
you're
she's a
getting
reader.
you're doing the movie.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, no, but it makes you want to watch. And if you don't have all the information right away, it's like you said, if you just see the book open, you don't know who's opening the book. You don't know where they're at.
Right.
It's like what's happening, what's happening, what's
And
happening, and then you
immediate
kind
shots
of
are very boring.
then it kind of gives you the reveal of something like this. So, but our task here was to do it in one shot.
Okay.
So, but I do want to take this moment
Oh,
because
no,
as I look at
we
this,
could do that from that back shot.
I want to take just a moment because I do want to bring up one of our rules. I'm going to check these off as I do them. What I'm going to do is go off into different tangents about our various rules here. And one of the rules I want to talk about real quickly is the rule of thirds. But again, just gonna keep saying this over and over, it's gonna be like, these aren't rules, these are guidelines. This is something that's worked in the past and makes pictures nice. But the idea is, if you look at this frame, if you divide it into thirds, and the reason I want to bring it up now, because it just kind of happened to land just about perfectly. If you divide it into thirds this way, and thirds this way, you end up with 4 points that are kind of interesting points of interest. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got these lines here, and you can see she's right on one of the thirds. This third is blank, but then the couch sort of is right along, right along these thirds as well. And by keeping things on these thirds, you tend to, it tends to be just a more interesting, pleasing picture. Maybe the opposite of it being, there'd be no way to do the opposite on here, but we'll find an example later on where we don't obey it. It may not work quite as well. You're always, of course, completely welcome to break any of these rules, but it's a good one. It's a good guideline to fall back on when you're composing, especially for people's eyes. We tend to be drawn to the eyes, and if we tend to, let's just do this real quick. If we
Arrow, just a second. So
Yes.
you're saying the rule of thirds is that, what you're talking about is that there'd be sort of focal points?
Yes.
There'd be 4.
3.
3 columns.
So if we,
That's what you got there.
Yeah,
It's the
these
same-
would be the.
so
It's the same grid pattern that you have on the camera.
So for example, if you have, if you just stay right where you're at, Gina, and I'm sorry you can't see it, but I'll make sure you're able to see this at some point.
Okay.
So if you kind of draw the same lines right here,
Uh-huh.
you'll see it just kind of her keeping her eyes right on one of those points.
Sure.
Just sort of makes for a nice picture, especially if she's talking to someone
Yeah.
over here. Like if you look toward me, it tends to be an image we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
blue kind of way.
It just sort of works. The reverse would be what a lot of people do when they first get started, is you'd put the person kind of their face right in the middle,
Ah.
I've done that.
and then you end up with a lot of what's called headroom up here, and it just doesn't
Doesn't work as well.
work
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But again, these are just guidelines.
They put them in that corner.
They do weird stuff like that.
I like that
That's
shot though. It's 'cause
I know,
it's like,
exactly.
This little thing going on here. Like,
No, it's really interesting because you've never really seen it before unless, you might see it when someone makes a mistake, but you've never really seen it on the network
It makes
television.
a
or
difference.
whatever. It's like,
now it's
what
art.
are you
That's
doing?
right.
A little bit like commercial thing, like you expect them to be like something order and stuff.
Yeah.
Like commercial stuff, that thing.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Ah.
And that also brings up another thing, which is headroom. It's one of the things we're really, I think, used to as people seeing. If you have too much room above a person's head, you want to be really careful with that. It just looks wrong for some reason. If it also looks really weird if you do the opposite, where if you're far back and you cut off the top of their head, that just looks.
I've been
Oh,
shooting
yeah.
like that for years. I wonder what my head went.
That just looks weird too, right? So there's not an exact science to it, but there is just something that looks more right
Yeah.
than others. Sorry, my camera.
I remember your tripod. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what happens with me. It just moves.
But there is something about that looks more right than others. As you zoom out, you can have more headroom. I mean, the further out I go, the more I tend to. Well, we go back to that original shot. She's got a lot of room above her head, and it doesn't look crazy. And as we zoom in, eventually, we'll get close enough where we don't need headroom. Will you look over at Jim for me? So if we get into a shot that's that close, we're totally legitimate cutting off.
And once again,
Cutting
you're
off the red.
filling.
Yeah, I mean,
her
if we were
face
like
is
this,
half the screen there.
if we were like that, it
On the
wouldn't make
right
any
side.
sense, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's just one of those points to watch. It's like, watch your headroom, because it is one of those, it's one of those areas from the top of the head to the top of the screen that if it's off, it looks awkward. And there's no real rule when it's right, but we've all watched enough television. You kind of have a sense of what it should look like.
You've placed her
That's
also to
interesting.
the left, to the right side of
Yeah,
the
and I tend just to
center.
do that sort
No,
of
that's
naturally.
cool, that's
I tend
cool.
to
You
do
look
that.
good.
Look right here for it, real quick.
Okay.
I tend to do that naturally, where it is just, again, here it is. Here's her third. Here's, you know, her most, you know, without even really thinking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it, her most forward eye is right on
Barely
that
touching
third.
her.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, it's not a rule,
Oh,
but it's a
yeah. There
guideline
you
that
go.
does tend to work. Okay,
It's a good frame. Smile.
rule third, headroom. Oh, and that leads us to also, that's why I kept telling, look over here. One
Sorry.
more time. No, you're doing great. It's nice to give space for the actor to look
Into.
have the actor look into. If you have it framed this way,
It's just weird.
it doesn't really work. So make sure if you're leaving that space, it's you're giving space for the actor to look into. And again, all these things, they make great pictures. They're also very conventional pictures, which is what you want 90% of the time. Conventional pictures allow a person to enjoy the story because they're not confused by what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately the goal. You want people to not be confused by the image.
Unless you want them to be confused.
Until you want, that's what I was going to say, that's 90% of the time. Until that 10% where you
I
want
want
them,
people to vomit after watching my stuff.
where you want them to be
during
confused.
it.
And sometimes, yeah, and sometimes that looks like this, you know? Sometimes
Yeah, I mean, I was
there's
gonna
reason
say,
to do something.
I had a shot like that.
if we can put her, if you can look back over there. So if she's talking to someone, we can put her right here. She doesn't have lead room, and so that's bad composition. Except now
We just did that.
we feel like she's sort of forced up against something.
Yeah.
We just
She's,
did that.
right, she's against something. So now you can start to think what's the meaning behind that? Why are we she's up against a wall, so to speak. Not a literal wall, but she's up against the wall of the frame. So why is she there? So you can start to think, you know, what's her motivation? What is she feeling as a character? And then start to tell that with the shot.
Usually somebody's gonna creep up from behind.
Yeah,
and
that's,
Oh, yeah.
that's what I thought too when I saw that shot. I was like, wait a second, this is a horror shot. You know?
Great.
Something's coming in from stage right.
All right, I'm going to mix it up one more time. So this time, are you good being on camera?
I'm all good.
Okay.
We
This
didn't get
time,
enough tears yet, all right? Come
We're
on,
gonna-
I want some bleeding hard
we're
here.
going to do a different shot, and this shot is the story's totally different. The story is she's no longer separated from her fella.
Okay.
In this shot,
Thank God.
you're separate. It's your best friend.
Okay.
Hang on, let me think on this. Nope. Again, I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm going to create something kind of with it. It's going to have emotional
It's fine.
resonance because that way we can all. If it didn't have any meaning, then we wouldn't know the shot. It has to be really laden with emotional stuff. So
Just give me your words.
it's a book. This is a book that her father wrote. She's never opened it before, and she just got it in the mail. Her father is long gone, whatever that means, and this is a really important book. She's never opened it before, and she's going to open to the first page and see inscription to her. Now where do we put the camera?
Did she just sit down? We're gonna have,
She sits down. She's never opened this book. She's got it in her hand,
yeah.
and she opens it, and she sees this.
How about
Did
I
she
give it a
walk
try
in?
first and then let's see what kind of camera.
Yeah.
should we
Oh, great.
I can't cry though, I'm sorry.
No, I don't
know
need.
how
You know
to
what?
do
I don't
that.
actually need acting. Let's just see what it might look like, regardless of where the camera's at.
So assuming that I got
Yep.
books and
Yeah.
In.
Perfect. I'm gonna cut right there. That was actually really helpful because that's exactly what it would look like. Where do we need the camera to best see that.
Slightly up so that you can look down into the book.
You wanna
You
get
wanna look down into the book?
And
Yeah,
I would go
you could-
opposite, low, where the book is a little bit out of focus, but you can see the book and focus on the face.
Yeah, I feel like having that book in the foreground and then having her, I mean, I was imagining her come into the frame. Maybe not actually come into the frame, but sort of come onto the book. You can even do that with just a rack focus.
Sid, will you help me for just a moment while you're talking? I'm gonna bring this forward. I need a young
there we
man,
go.
strong back. So, all
So
right.
having that camera maybe up a little bit close and a little bit sort of a wider shot, right in front of the book, and then having her sort of behind it.
So let me put it.
And I would
that's
come-
kind of where you get that. I mean, do you guys were you sort of saying the same thing?
Similar,
Or-
yeah.
Very,
Okay,
I
so
like the idea of coming from the bottom
so let me.
as a,
Actually, a lot of low
the
angles.
first one coming up.
Do you know what? Sit
From
in
where
this
it
couch. What am I
has the
talking
legs, you
Yeah.
can see the book
We're moving to a
pointing into
different-
her face.
We're moving to a different
right,
couch.
with an in and out, you know, really tight. Because I
Have we
like
got
the
any
idea
kind of
coming up from
consensus?
the
I'm sorry, I
ground.
kind of lost the thread.
No, we just.
You're
keep on
gonna do a
doing
low
something
angle,
I'm gonna do a low angle. What am I? Let's.
with the book-
What am I pointing? What's in the frame?
Her face
It's gonna be-
with like a piece of the book, that you can see the book but out of focus.
And we're thinking
Yeah.
a lower angle.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe like
a
over
low
the
angle, the
shoulder or
book is in the
something, it was like
foreground,
the-
and
Making you work.
No, I like it. That's actually, you know what?
'Cause
Thanks
I
for
would
bringing
think
that
go
up.
really low.
If you don't do any work, you're probably not getting the shot you need.
Well, this is what I've been thinking lately.
Oh, and you know what? I just kind of broke one of my own rules. Something to think about.
Yeah.
This what I always like to do is before you start monkeying with the tripod, find out where your shot is, because it's much easier
To go straight.
to then you're like, I want the camera here, and then you
Yeah.
put the tripod here, rather than. So
So you can just take it off the tripod.
what are you thinking? Would you mind picking up that book for me?
Looking at, yeah, and my idea was to pull back, coming from
I'm just gonna
legs
create
here,
one.
coming up, and getting the face in the center, right? But then we're catching the books. I would actually come as close as we can to the ground, filling out the frame with her here, coming up. You know, I would go even lower. Yeah, that's what I was gonna start. I was gonna start more all the way down there, maybe more back, and you know.
Yeah.
But the
Okay,
long story
here's-
short,
let me-
that was
um,
just what I thought.
Let me
Next
just
is next.
say something. I think you're all completely on the right track, and I think the important thing, I would feel really cheated if, as a viewer, if the camera was so far back I couldn't see her face. I mean, to me, let's go back to Hitchcock. What Hitchcock said about the most important thing in the frame should be the largest.
the
something
size
most
of the
important.
object should equal its importance.
Size of object should equal its importance. In any case,
Yeah.
I think what the takeaway of that is you have to think about, as Ellen said, what the story is, what's important in this frame. And for the other one, I really like the idea of that empty space on the couch. To me, that worked. That empty space sells loneliness. On this one, it's the opposite. I think that getting, like you're saying, down low and seeing her face.
I think like
Well, we're
maybe
coming from
works
the
for
book.
me.
We're coming from this book that she just got given,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if we can somehow put the book at the most important spot, you know, actually being the largest thing in the frame, you know, where we're filling out the whole frame with the book.
So let me actually take a pause from yours. Does anyone have something totally different they want to try? Because I'm liking this, but I'm not sure it's actually reading quite. Go ahead,
Listen
go
to
ahead,
me,
take your.
man. I haven't done anything yet.
No,
As far as
like it.
using actors, I haven't done it yet. I've been
You
doing
know,
nothing
what,
but
what if you
art
could see her
videos.
holding a page?
Yeah,
Or
I like to
I
see what
actually-
the page
opening a
says.
page, because then it would mean that there's something on that page that's important.
Just me, I tend to like that so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, going back to
I'm saying anything about
But
it.
it's-
biggest thing in the frame is the subject of the story. Book is the subject of the
Yeah,
show.
that's why I was
So
coming
the
up
book
from
should
the
be
bottom,
facing
because
the
I got a lot of book in that, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
See, there we
Just
go, and now,
about-
and
Yes,
now
yes,
as she
yes.
starts to, now as she starts to act, Oh, she's there, okay.
I agree.
But look at her face, and now our camera can come in. We got time. 1, 2,
So now
3.
there's a
We only got 3
relationship
seconds to
between
make
her
it.
and the-
No shot can be longer than 5 seconds, so, so that's the pull-in time. We give her a couple moments to react to the book, pull into the depth of the stare, boom, pull back, or something like that, whatever.
Right, I almost feel, I mean, I know now we're getting into lens choice, but I feel like a wide lens to give her a little bit more distance from the book
Right.
than what we're seeing right now. Just to really, the book in the foreground.
Do you want a wider lens, you say?
Yeah, just push
Why
her
don't I
back a
have
little
one?
bit and bring in.
Uh,
Yeah, I feel like I'm almost sort of having the book right.
I can't see. Well, in any case, we could, the point is,
That's good.
we can mess with this all day long. This is great because, again, the answer is not to find how we're going to shoot it today. The answer is to, or the point is to say, look at how many ways you can shoot a person on a couch, and look at all these questions you can ask. And I mean, this can go on. This can go on and on and on. Of how you want to. How do you want to shoot the scene? Right? Does it have movie? That's it. Which of those shots had the most movie?
Mine.
I feel like the first one.
I don't know the answer. But that's all you have to do. You're like, does it have, for now, does it have a movie? So, and we kind of went into a couple of the other points that I wanted to talk about, which is, we started to bring the camera low, bring it high, see the difference. I talk a lot about this. I mean, I think this is how a lot of people shoot, or, up here, and because it's sort of easy, and it's how we see the world. And if if Uncle Joe is filming the birthday party, chances are he's going to be right here, just, getting whatever happens to be around. But to get really down low, to bring the camera up high, to try different camera angles, to try different lens choices, that is when it starts getting really interesting. And myself, I really like being on either on a really long part of the lens or the really wide part of the lens. Not all the time, but if I'm trying to create something that has mooey, that's something that grabs people's attention, usually using a different part of filming in a way that not everybody films will do that, will catch attention. I want to talk about moving the camera. And so the way I like to think about when you're moving the camera is that the camera is a human head. So however you see the scene, and this can kind of go for composition as well, but however you see the scene is how the camera is an appropriate way for the camera to move. So if it's a really frantic scene, you can be frantic with a camera. If it's a really calm scene, you can just leave a nice, still, almost make it look like a photograph. Just a nice still shot can really work. You were talking about like that pastoral scene, Paula. If you're just looking at a opening morning pastoral, there's a barn and there's a few chickens down, it would make no sense to be like running around with the camera chasing chickens,
Nice slow pan.
Yeah, just like, I would even say, just like, it opens up and it's just a perfectly still shot, and in the background there's the sound of a rooster or something, just like there, and then you can move into it. But I really like to think moving from one shot, one picture to another. So, let's do that book again. Let's just take a look at something.
The same one?
Same book, same everything.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite shots.
So if we're gonna move this camera in this particular scenario, we were lower than that, but let's say we had a shot something. Get that TV out of there. Just something like that for argument's sake. But we had the book in it. But let's say we want to separate the two. So maybe we'll start with a really nice, what's a nice looking photo of that book look like?
You getting that?
Tilt your body, tilt the book just a little bit towards me.
Other way?
Nope, just exactly like you were doing, is what I was thinking. Towards me, come this way, there you
Where
go.
we can see the
But
inside
less,
of the book.
split the difference. All right,
Yeah.
so, again, I'm not gonna sit here and refine this, but so, if we're gonna go from if we're gonna move the camera, think about where your starting position is. Maybe it looks like that. And then, we'll move to her reaction to it. And we'll figure out what our second framing is. And maybe that's not it.
Yeah, the storyline one, we want to keep them,
I'm gonna
this
get it
is where
closer
you
to
want
her.
to pull back, but we don't have,
Yeah.
I start to think that.
So just for now, this is just for argument's sake. We see the book. We move up to her reaction. So we've got moving from one photograph to another, but each moment we set very clearly. We didn't just, let the book was originally over to one side. We're like, no. I want to start on the book in this photograph and her reaction in this photograph. Does that make sense? Let's play with the idea of the camera movement matching the action matching the story. So here's what we'll do. You have lost your keys in this couch. Are you still good being our actress?
Sure, I
Okay.
don't mind. Just give me yours.
You've lost your keys in this couch.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to have to pull the camera off of here, but you'll all kind of get an idea of what's going on.
Okay.
I'm going to want you to walk in from here, and you're going to go frantically search for your keys. Let's just, we'll have a chance to take a look at it in a moment.
Okay.
Whoops. Let's turn the power
Should I
off.
find the
Press
key in
record.
the end?
You should find the keys, because I need to get home at some point. Actually, you can go for it. Together. All right, back up over there.
Hey, wouldn't you want to get a picture of her coming into the scene?
I'm going to right now. That's one of the things I'm saying. All right, go ahead and walk in. You've got to find those keys. Great.
I keep destroying your couch.
You're late.
Put the
You're
keys
late.
back
Get out
down.
of here. You're late.
Back down in
Grab
there,
your keys
and
and
let's-
go.
Let's film it a different way. Do the exact same thing.
Mhm.
Hang on, let's get this.
But when you get them, leave because there's a reason you're trying to do this so frantically.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Should we just,
go ahead.
that's just me.
Do the same thing. This worked so much better than I could have expected it to. That looks so unfrantic, and the other one looks so frantic. I'll take those keys back.
This is where you do double the speed and.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's comic.
Speed on that.
It's semi-comical, actually. That,
You have a comic angle to you. You have a comedy.
I do have a thought.
I'm glad. Yes.
About how we would direct our actor, probably, because it's purely if we said to the actor, rather than say, you go and find your keys frantically, we say, you've got the car is locked and there's a dog, and your dog is in there and it's suffocating.
Yeah, but
and
we're
you have to open
composition.
that
No,
car.
listen, because this is a good
You have
point.
to open that car. And then our actor's motivation would be where we want it to be, which is to find the keys and get the hell, because there's a reason for those keys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thank you. No,
that
that's
would
a
be
really, really good point. That was
That's what we were
terrible
saying.
actor director.
That's
Terrible. No. I was going for exactly one thing, which is just, we're trying to look at cameras. David could not be any more correct. telling your actor to be, this is way outside of what we're talking about, but telling your actor to be frantic generally doesn't work. Give them what I call an as if.
Yeah,
Like it's as
right.
if you know, your dog is whatever you said, dog's locked in the car
Dog
and you have to get your car,
locked
it's
in the
gonna die. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Give them like,
Yeah, whatever
give them
you're-
some sort of motivation other than the emotion. Be happy, be sad. Generally doesn't get you too far.
Yeah.
But with that said, as an actor, you're going to get those notes a lot. Be happy, be sad. You got to figure out how to make it.
It's up to the director
All right, so this is frantic.
to make you really do something.
Can you see that?
Good director
Okay,
makes a play.
here we go. And frantically looking for keys.
Nice, yeah.
Great. That looked frantic, right? I mean
Frantic, yeah.
that wouldn't even matter what she did necessarily. Okay. Okay. I mean, granted, we're pointing behind her, but there's like no, there's
It's a
no
good
urge,
cut. I mean,
There's
you
no
can cut to that
urgency.
for 3 seconds.
right?
Yes, I see what you're saying. The camera doesn't reflect the,
Those from
The story wasn't told as well, second time.
Right.
Right. I would have liked to see your hand go into the couch. You know?
Oh, yeah,
Whereas
see,
the
like, open
hand,
and then
just the
just-
hand,
But why?
grabbing the keys, or
Why?
thing. Because for me, it's just like, okay, so we're doing the frantic key thing. Or when she was reaching into the couch, that was like kind of proved how frantic she was. So I would have like gone for an uptight there.
Right.
Even though I don't know if that's right or wrong or whatever.
That's perfectly right. If
You
it's
know?
got, if it makes you want to watch it.
Right.
Now, if it works for you, it's right. It's the.
Now, isn't that the live shoot thing? Like if you have 2 cameras that are stationary and having a third camera that's roving, is that something like a roving camera could get? And you'd have an offshoot of that action, so you're not wasting the actor's time. To have like 3 cameras going on that shot.
I will say never. When I'm directing, or even when I am asked to DP a shoot, director of photography, I will rarely, if ever, use more than 1 camera. Because, in my opinion, I feel like it takes your focus away from that shot. If I have 3 cameras running, then I'm paying 1/3 of my attention to each of those cameras at best, or maybe I'm giving 90% of my attention to this one, and the other 2 shots I don't even care about. So unless I'm shooting an explosion or a stunt or something where, I mean, it really does matter, you know, I can only do this a certain number of times, then yeah, I'll go through and I'll spend my 90 minutes, and I'll set up all my shots and make sure that everything's going to work, and then we do it. But if I'm shooting a dialogue scene, usually I'll shoot 1 actor, and I'll worry about that, and then I'll shoot the other actor, and I'll worry about that. But that's just me.
Over the shoulders.
Plenty of
I
other
think- I have a
filmmakers and
commentary on
videographers have completely different ways of doing that.
I think of it as, because I've read, I think of it as the difference between the way Hitchcock would shoot it or the way Richard Lester would shoot it, for instance, in the Beatles films or one of those. Because, and Hitchcock would storyboard it and he would say, you know, there is that, he would have that insert shot of the hand grasping those keys. So that he would have the wide shot, the person enters, and he would have, you know, a couple of angles, and then he would have the insert shot that you talked about, the hand grabs the keys. And he would storyboard it, and he would shoot it with a single camera, each discrete section. He would have his actor continue to do the process. But then Lester, who came from live TV, described how he would shoot. He would have 2 cameras, and then he himself often would grab a handheld camera, and as the action progressed, he would structure the entire scene with his actors, and they would go through the entire scene, and 2 cameras would shoot it, and he would move with his camera. He would catch, and then later on in the editing, he would put it together, and he would try different ways of putting it together, and that's what originally, way back when in the 60s, when he started doing that, that's what led to what they started to call the jump cut, because he would pick clips from the different cameras and cut them together, and frequently you would have something like a medium shot, and then it would jump into a close-up or something, and it was jarring and odd at that time. Nowadays, of course, it's conventional. So those are two completely different philosophies. But as Lester said, he liked the multiple camera. He came from live TV. He liked to shoot quickly. And Hitchcock had he had a structured way of doing it. Both are just like there's two different storytellers telling a story in a different way.
Right. Yeah, to answer your question from my point of view, and I think one of the things to point out is nothing I'm talking about here is from like a Hollywood perspective. It's all, we're Access Bellingham.
Yeah.
That's right.
I
So-
refuse to be small.
We're not small. No, but I mean, so I can only answer from my point of view, and I almost always shoot with one or two cameras, and if I'm doing something like that, I would only be shooting it with one camera, and if I needed the close-up of the hand, I'd get that at I'd finish the scene, then
Right.
let's
And
punch in for a close-up,
Yeah,
and get
grab
and then
the
I can
thing.
cut to that in
Yeah.
editing. But that was my question. That was why my initial thought was like, why do I need that? Because I know it's going to take an extra setup in my head.
Yeah.
So it's like, do I really need finding the key? Like, is that an important enough moment to
Right,
justify?
It's once again back to choices.
Yeah, like, is that important enough to justify taking my camera, replacing it, and getting your hand grabbing the keys, which you'd think would be easy, but it always takes 4 times because it's like, okay, I didn't really see the keys. When you go in this time, twist your hand that way, I have enough move. We're gonna have to go slower. Kind of cheat it, going a little. It's gonna take time.
Well, that's
So
what
you
the
ask
reason I
yourself,
was
is
like,
it
if
worth
there was
it?
a third camera there.
Yeah, but the third
that
camera, like
maybe
if I'm,
they would go and fulfill
if
those
I'm
alignments.
frantically watching her, I'm gonna end up. The third camera's gonna be in my shot. It's just gonna be too confusing. No,
Yeah,
I get it as a
that's
second
what I
shot.
would think too. I would worry about the cameraman
Yeah.
getting within the shot
Anyway.
of one of the other ones and screwing that up.
So I mean, it's a question that's kind of, in one way it's just maybe a little bit redundant, but the other way it's a really important question because it brings up one of the things you have to ask yourself all the time. Doesn't matter what you're shooting. You're doing documentaries, you're doing, whatever you're doing, you have to make choices. David's shooting something for Idiom. He's like, can I do this with 2 cameras or do I need 3 cameras? Do I need to grab another camera operator? With this, we've got a camera just sitting there. There's no operator on it. I don't even know if it's running. Is it running? Do we know? See, we just don't even
There's
know.
no red light
So
on it.
it's like it's a matter of you start to ask yourself like how important is this? Yeah, you just have to start. You have your big plan, and then you have to get realistic. And sometimes you just sometimes you don't have time to get the extra shot or have time to get 3 cameras on set or whatever it is. All right, that's it
Cool.
for composition. I'm here.
This is lighting.
Ask a few. Next is lighting. Well, actually, Kate,
Hey,
who
do we
disappeared,
have
she
any
wanted something
lighting?
about directing, so we're going to do directing next, maybe lighting at some point. So we got more of these coming down the line.
Directing sound fun.
What's that?
Directing sound fun, sorry.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I'm around to ask questions.